Hello everybody, Mr. Delgado here. I'm going to be talking about our next unit today. Our next unit is section 2.1, units of measurement. So the main idea for our unit this week and a little bit of last week is that chemists use an internationally recognized system of units called the SI system to communicate their findings, which we're going to be talking about in detail this week. So, what are the SI base units for time, length, mass, and temperature? These are our essential questions. How does adding a prefix change a unit? Now, some of this stuff you may or may have not learned in your middle school classes or in earlier science classes, hopefully. Our third question is, how are derived units different from for volume and density? Now, the word derived means that it comes from two parts. So when somebody says that there's a derived unit, it means that it has two parts to make the unit. Our vocabulary words this week are base unit, second, meter, kilogram, Kelvin, derived unit, liter, and density. We're going to be talking about those words quite a bit. So this slide is really important. It's also a reference slide, so you can kind of go back to this to make sure that you know these items. So on this little table in here, it shows the quantity and it shows the base unit. So for time, you see that the base unit is seconds. For length, you see that it's meters. For mass, you see that it's kilograms. Also, for mass, it can also be grams when you're using it for conversions. Temperature is Kelvin. Amount of a substance is mole. That one we're going to be talking more about later on in the semester and next semester. Electric current is amperes or amps, which most people probably have heard of. Luminous intensity, that means how much light you have or how strong the light is. That's called CD or candela. So all of those units, they can add what's called a prefix to them, and they're multiplied or divided by multiples of 10. And hopefully people know this from your other classes. So as you go through these slides, just kind of keep that in mind. And there's also some detail in these slides that you can read out on your own. And if you have any questions, you can ask me. So this slide for Kelvin is very important. I'm just going to kind of zoom in on it a little bit so that you guys see this. So this right here is a really cool little reference slide also. So when you're doing your bell ringers, you might use this to answer some of your bell ringers. The really important part of this is that you look at the boiling point of water and you notice that 100 degrees Celsius is boiling point, and so is 373. So when you're building equations and you're looking at this slide to convert for different Kelvin and Celsius or Fahrenheit, you can kind of use that 273 to make those equations, which we're going to kind of go over as we continue this semester. Okay, continuing on. Derived units, like I said before, have two parts. And the really important part of that is that sometimes there's units where there's two parts. And an example of that would be speed, where you're using meters per second. Sometimes they can use other units like miles per hour. But the important thing is if it has a division sign in it and it has two parts, that's called a derived unit. So this slide is also very important. This slide is also going to be used for your bell ringers. And what this slide shows really specifically some of the equivalent values. So in your geometry classes and some of your other classes, I hope that everybody has kind of covered volume. So that's one of the big goals for geometry, to understand volume and understand that solids take up so much space and they're three-dimensional. And then liquids also take up space, but they have a different unit than solids. So centimeters cubed is a really common one for solids. and that has an equivalent value in liters or milliliters. So this slide is really important for the bell ringers. So continuing on with derived units, another example of a derived unit that we need to understand for chemistry is density. So density is the relationship between mass, which is everything that takes up space and has mass, right? So that's matter. And so it's the relationship between mass and how much space it takes up. Very important concept in chemistry. So there's a couple of examples in here, and I kind of want you to go through these on your own. They're really, really great examples of how to use the equations to calculate density and volume. So as you go through those examples, if you have any questions, you can ask me. And on those examples, I'm actually going to be going over really specific ways to solve those on the PBL time in the afternoons. So that PBL time is really important. If you come to those PBLs, I'm going to be talking about really specific math that you're going to be using and can use to solve those types of problems. And I want everybody to be coming to the PBL, so I'm going to probably start counting it for participation points. If anybody has any questions about this or anything else, call me on the phone I put in Google Classroom, text me on that phone, email me. However you need to get a hold of me, you can. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great week.